Hello and welcome back to the Springs in the Desert podcast. I am Cassandra. I'll be your host for today's episode, and I am here with one of our founders, Anne. How's it going?
Hey, Cassandra, doing great.
And we also have our assistant director, Jillian. How are you?
Good. So good to be here with you.
Yes, it's so good to be with both of you. Listeners, we are here again for another tough one. Just going to come right out and say it. Another disclaimer, we're going to be talking about pregnancy after miscarriage today for reasons that will become increasingly clear. But what we just want to say is that if your heart is tender today, just take stock. Maybe this isn't the one for you today. Praise God, we have many, many more episodes to choose from. And maybe if you are up for it, and maybe this is part of your story, maybe you are hoping for it to be part of your story, then as always, you are welcome. And if not, just come back to this another time, or not at all. So I just want to open it up to Jillian, our beloved friend, to tell your story.
Thank you. I just want to echo that. That as difficult as it might be for some of our listeners to hear this episode, it is likely as difficult for me to share and to be going through this experience. But I'm just so grateful for the team and this community who has continued to walk with me, even though my story has changed a little bit. And so, my husband and I in 2019, we lost two children to miscarriage. And after many tests and doctors, there really was no reason why this was happening. And at first, it was really frustrating because the definition of recurrent miscarriage has changed a little bit more recently, but it typically is said that most doctors won't address recurrent miscarriage until after the third loss. And now many providers will try to address it after the second loss, but no matter when they address it, they are typically only addressing the physical parts of that experience. And the woman or the husband and the wife are still left with this hole, this spiritual grief that is typically not addressed by a provider unless, for whatever reason, you have a very close relationship with them and they have, perhaps a Christian or Catholic background or something like that. So that was a challenge. We, praise be to God, did find a Catholic OB who would call us as he was leaving daily mass to let us know that he was praying for us, or checking in at 8 p.m., 8:30 at night, just seeing how I felt that day. And that was really, really a comfort, even though we only saw him for a short time. But from 2019 until late 2022, we experienced infertility for, again, no real apparent reason. Although we were able to get pregnant in 2019, even though those lives ended and we didn't get to meet those children, we weren't able to conceive then. And it wasn't until that Catholic OB had said, although typically secondary infertility is spoken of as, you have one or two or however many children, and then you have a period of time where you're unable to conceive. Sometimes those who experience that, but in loss, kind of get missed. That we were able to conceive and now we can't. And so he goes, I would consider you in the category of secondary infertility. That there was something that physically was working at one point and now it's not. And so we got to try to address it. And it wasn't until he kind of gave me permission to see myself in this category that I knew what I might need in terms of support, like Springs in the Desert.
Mm-hmm.
And so fast forward then to the end of 2022, my husband and I found out that we were pregnant with our third little one. And praise be to God, they are still with us today. Every day is a gift, but it also comes with a lot of challenges. And I think that's kind of, what we want to explore a little bit in today's episode about what that looks like for someone in our community who might find themselves in this position where they are pregnant, and now what do they do? What does that community look like? Where is their community? How can they interact with springs in the desert? And so, yeah, in brief, that's my story. That's where we're at today.
Jillian, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, the experience of miscarriage, it's not part of my experience, but it's traumatizing, and it can be traumatizing in so many different ways. I mean, and living in the culture of death, we all know what that can be like. And then there's kind of the added pain of the life not always being recognized, you know what I mean, and not always being acknowledged, and then you don't know what to say when people ask if you have children, and how can we honor those lives, because they're your children, you know and I can only imagine, and we'll talk about it more, what this experience of pregnancy has been like for you, and the anxiety and everything. But I just wanted to thank you for sharing, and for coming on this podcast and sharing it with the rest of us.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm just grateful again that I have a space to share, uh, because it definitely hasn't been necessarily all full of joy, which is hard to say. It's hard to share that too, because I know many in this community would really, really love, and they desire to have this experience. And so it's difficult to say that, uh, it hasn't been always, every day isn't the most joyful day, that I've had in our path. But being able to share about it allows the Lord to reveal the blessings that He's giving us. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. So was there a point after you guys got this positive pregnancy test, and that you felt like you could finally relax, or have you been dealing with anxiety? What's that been like for you?
That's a great question. I'm sure that this varies for every person, but for my experience, I remember a point at 17 weeks that I felt I could rejoice a little bit more. And part of that had to do with receiving an ultrasound. Um, and I know some of those images and photos on social media can be really difficult to see. And so I, it was really, I was in this position of irony that they were very difficult for me to see before. And now I have one of my own. And so how do I honor my experience while also honoring the many, many women and couples who this is, they long for this, and it's difficult for them to see this. And for various reasons, we didn't get our first ultrasound photo until 17 weeks, which is much later than typically you're able to get one. But it was at that time when we got that image that I felt, and I think due to loss before, I felt that I had a little something tangible to honor this child, and sort of begin to develop a deeper relationship with them. I think because our first two were taken for whatever reason early. I didn't really get to develop that. I didn't get to develop hopes or a relationship or dreams or desires for their life like I was able to begin at that point. So I would say, and I think that also speaks to the beauty of ultrasounds. Speaking of the pro-life movement, that they are so adamant that ultrasounds be available to women, because there was something that really touched my heart in a way that was much difficult before. Again, realizing that is very difficult for many in this community. But I would say that getting some sort of tangible uh, material to see our child was probably when I was able to rejoice a little more.
Jillian, I want to say that I'm so appreciative of the care with which you are speaking. First of all, to echo Cassandra, I mean, just in a way, the courage to come on the podcast and speak, especially because you're normally in the hosting chair and guiding conversation in this community, and so to kind of come in a different position and share your story and to do it with such care. And as Cassandra said, we know that for a lot of us in this community, this is hard, not because we don't wish you well or we're not happy for you, and you understand all of that. And to everyone listening, like, it's okay if this is hard for you, and if you need to pause it, that's okay too. But I'm appreciative of the care that you are taking, and especially when you talked about getting that ultrasound picture and realizing that, I mean, now kind of the tables are turned. You were that person who would go on Instagram and see somebody posing with the picture and, would feel that sort of dagger in the heart, right? There's not a playbook for this, is there? There's not a playbook really for how we navigate infertility and all of those emotions. And there's also not a sort of guide that we can follow when our story changes as yours had. So I just think, generally speaking, we all have to be patient and generous with each other. And I appreciate your generosity toward this community. And maybe you can talk about that a little bit more in terms of how this pregnancy has not kind of erased. It's not like your memory of the past is gone now.
Yeah, I would love to. I think as Cassandra mentioned a little bit ago about honoring our first two children, I think the fact that my husband and I really made that a focus in our experience and in our journey, that has really allowed me to honor this community in this experience, because things like you see on social media, happy birthday to the child that made me a mother, or happy, like celebrating something in relation to their child. And a lot of those comments, a lot of those announcements, a lot of those celebrations, women in this community have not yet been able to celebrate or share. And a lot of those firsts, neither will I. And so I think just understanding that we have two other children and trying to honor them in this experience by asking for their intercession and announcing when we shared with our family and friends that we were pregnant for the third time, that this is our third child, that we are now a family of five. And I think that also helped others know where we were coming from, that we don't stand as a family who's having their first child. We're having our third. And I think that's just allowed us to take a posture that will never be separated from this community. Our experience of loss and our experience of years of infertility won't ever go away. And as I was just sharing about how long it took us to kind of feel the validation or the ability to celebrate, was because of those losses and those experiences. And in fact, when we found out that we were pregnant, we were, just shocked. Of course, we've charted in the past, and we pick it up and put it down whenever whenever that's the season we're in. And so, of course, we're always open to life and know that it's a possibility. But because it hasn't happened for so many years, I really just didn't even anticipate that that could be the month that this test looks different, or I'm experiencing different things physically. So, and that is because of our losses. And so I think because of that and our desire to honor our children, the Lord has allowed us to continue serving those who carry the cross of infertility, no matter where they're at on that path, and to have, as best as we can, the ability to see them where they're at, rather than sort of forgetting that that is part of our story. And also, we don't know what the next years will look like. Uh, we're so grateful that this is what we've received right now. We don't know why that has happened, but we also don't know what the next years are going to look like. And so we remember that too. And that also, this particular cross the Lord has given us, there's many joys in it, but I know there's going to be many frustrations and hardships and things that I don't know. And so to remember that everyone is carrying their own cross, I think is just especially in a Christian world, is the way to begin, the eyes to view that with, that we're all carrying a cross. And even if that changes or looks a little different, we can still love one another in that.
Yeah, it just reminds me, thank you for saying all of that, because I think in our Instagram culture, we have certain perceptions, about what things are like. And, it just reminds me of something that Redbird Ministries posted recently about the quote unquote rainbow baby not kind of solving everything, not taking all of that loss and grief away. And of course, we talk about this a lot in the context of adoption, that an adopted child is not a replacement for anybody, that they are, their own human being, with all of that worth to not be a replacement for someone. And I think, it's not exactly the same, but I think analogically we can understand how this baby is not a replacement for their siblings,
Right.
and it doesn't take away all of that loss and grief that you have experienced.
Yeah. And, it's, again, the Lord, I'm sure, sometimes people call it a sense of humor or mystery or whatever it is, but we have currently a family member who is also pregnant with their third child. And all three of their children were able to be carried to full term, and they're now some of our beloved nieces and nephews. And they have been very supportive. And when we were at a family function, someone had said, and they're expecting their third child. And she said, oh, they are too. She pointed to us to, honor that we are too. But realizing that our family, quote unquote, should look more like theirs than it does right now is a constant challenge. And just all for all sorts of reasons, the idea of experience and trying to make decisions, and that they've made these decisions several times. They also happen to be due within a week of us, and so we're really going through this third pregnancy just right together, which has been also really really challenging. And so yeah, I think that it's helpful to, if you're able to, depending on the person you're talking to share as much of the cross that you're carrying as you can, so that they can receive it in a way that they can respond well. And that's, our family members have, although they're not perfect, neither are we, but they're trying, to find a way to honor that, and that allows us to do the same.
That's so good. Yeah, I mean, we have this deep desire to be understood, right? And that's why we're always working to, you know, further and increase awareness around infertility and pregnancy loss as well, especially for us in the context of infertility. And yeah, just that understanding um, that we have to be charitable with our friends and family members who, if it's not their experience, maybe even if it is their experience and maybe they've had, you know, different things happen to them or a different understanding, that, there's going to be some challenges in communication, but that, yeah, that, yeah, we just want to be understood and just have to keep trying to communicate the reality. But it's so beautiful that your loved one there was acknowledging, yeah, like this is number 3 for you guys too, you know?
Yeah, it was really a special moment, and I just ask for the grace to remember those over the more challenging times, because it does, sometimes it's difficult. It doesn't feel like I can quite just speak to a woman who hasn't lost in a way that I can relate totally on motherhood, but also in a community with those who are experiencing infertility, to also honor that, the cross that they're carrying. It can be a challenge to figure out how much should I share, how much can I uh, listen to them, also honoring where am I at today, because yeah, as you said, the grief doesn't go away. It is with us, and it will be, I anticipate, for the rest of my life. And I think that's perhaps something too, I just want to, for those who are listening, to just share that, um, it will come and go. Those that grief comes and goes, and I think that's, we can all understand that. But in some small way, for those who have experienced miscarriage, that that grief is still, it's because of the life of the child. And so in some ways there's some beauty in that child will be with me for the rest of my earthly life, and I get to carry them with me. And some days that looks like talking to people about miscarriage or trying to honor their life by, talking to our child about their older siblings, or making sure, people know their names, or, just different ways like that. Um, but other days it'll look like grief, and sometimes that can be a challenge for our community, who doesn't realize, maybe here closer to home, why I'm struggling on a certain day, or why I'm nervous about a doctor's appointment when really nothing has gone wrong, that I'm sort of waiting for bad news, or I'm anticipating something will go wrong, because that was my experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a lot of asking for a lot of grace to receive people well, share well and prudently, and just receive whatever the Lord is giving us that day.
Yeah, I think that's also a great message for people who might be listening who are family or friends of those who are in this community, or perhaps they're not part of this community, but they have a loved one who is struggling with infertility, or who has experienced a loss, and perhaps has experienced pregnancy now following maybe years of infertility, or whatever that infertility, whatever that situation might be. Um, to also honor that time, that experience, whether it's a loss or the difficulty that they went through with infertility. And we talked about this a little bit with Stacy. You can go back and listen to the episode with her, another team member, who experienced now pregnancy after many years of infertility, so that as friends and family, we honor that. And so we're joyful and happy with this pregnancy, with this new life, but that we are careful in the things that we say too, like, oh, what did you do that finally made it work? Or, in your case, Jillian, speaking as if you didn't have those two losses, as if those children kind of didn't exist. Let's forget about them. And now let's just focus on this one. So, yeah, I really appreciate everything that you shared, because I think this is part of what we want to do with Springs in the Desert too, is to help the people around us to understand our experiences better, so that they can support us, whether we're family members or friends or pastors.
Yeah.
I really appreciate what you said there, because it is, I think that with any cross, it can be hardest to share that with people who are closest to us. And I certainly have found that in my experience, although family and friends, I think, always have the best intentions. Sometimes you just don't know how your heart's going to receive something.
Right.
And so just trying to be gentle with ourselves and each other, and realizing that, as I said, we're all carrying a different shaped cross that was made for us. It's beautiful that Jesus and Joseph were carpenters, that they built these crosses for us. Sometimes I think of them sort of whittling, our crosses for us, and to try to receive that and then ask him, how can I better respond next time, or how maybe I should share less next time or more, so that we can better build up the kingdom of God.
Amen.
So, in our last couple minutes, Jillian, I just want to ask you to just share your understanding of hope now in light of this news. I know sometimes we are hopeful when we see someone else's prayers get answered. And sometimes, I know for some reason for me, it makes me feel like, I don't know, it's kind of, I don't know how to say this. It's hard, when you see someone else's prayers get answered. But, when we have these deep conversations and we know that not everything is all sunshine and roses just because you've been blessed because of this whole conversation that we've had about how it doesn't wipe away everything that you've gone through. So what has that been like for you?
Yeah, I would first say I am still learning about it. I'm still, a couple things come to mind. With our first two, we didn't make it to the point of being able to talk about a registry, about things that we might want in our home for our child. And now that we are at that point and are creating that, I still get nervous that, what if we've made this and we won't be able to use these items? Or we have a date set for a shower. What if we have to cancel this date? And that is not of the Lord. That anxiety is not of the Lord. And so I have to be careful I need to share that with my husband so he can recognize where I'm at, because the evil one wants that hidden. But those kinds of fears are very real, for me and perhaps others. And so, what hope looks like is just trying to find some time with my husband, to sit down and maybe for 15 minutes work on the registry and just be excited about researching and praying before it and thanking God for the opportunity to discern what car seat we want, or which is is very confusing. It's a lot. It's stressful, and and but just to try to have a posture of gratitude for each day,
Mm-hmm.
and for each opportunity, whether that's at a doctor's appointment and we have to make some sort of decision there, or it's something that we're planning for and trying to make a decision there. Um, you know, how do we share things with people? How do we, just all these decisions that we are faced with? It's just trying to be grateful for them and realizing that we've never gotten to do this before and we may never get to do it again. And so just trying not to miss those moments and to be present to them, even if it's difficult. So I would say, yeah, I'm still learning about that. And I think I always will be, probably for the rest of my life. But trying to reject the fears and just accept each new opportunity as a gift and to be grateful.
I think that's great advice for everyone in this community, wherever we are on the path, to take each day to be grateful for each day. And when that fear creeps in, to just ask Jesus to, cast away that spirit of fear and to just rely on him. I think that's something that everyone in this community can take to heart.
Yes. Thank you, ladies, so much. Talk about gratitude. I'm grateful for you and for this community. And listener, if you are still with us, just know that, we are grateful for you and that we're here walking with you as you figure out what it means to hope and what it means to pray and what it means to surrender our lives to the Lord. And, I hope that this talk has just been a balm to you, and that, it's just an honor. It's an honor to walk with you. We'll see you next time.